Hello, I'm Tommy Waller. I'm a Christian Zionist. I am the head of HaYovel here in the heartland of Israel. I'm really excited to be on the show today.
And I'm Kimberly Troup. I am the director of the U.S. Office of Christian Friends of Israeli Communities, and I too am a Christian Zionist.
And I'm Sondra Oster Baras. I'm the director of the Israel Office of Christian Friends of Israeli Communities, and I am an Orthodox Jew. Well, we have a great program planned for you today. We're going to be talking about kosher. Now, I know kosher is a word that a lot of people have heard about out there. And in fact, I remember the first time I started dealing with Christians and I said to somebody, well, I keep kosher. And they said, right, pickles. And I'm thinking kosher, pickles. Well, in the United States, there's this certain kind of dill pickles that say on it kosher style pickles. Well, as we'll discuss today, there isn't a whole lot of connection between kosher and pickles, but we can take that up as we go. Anyway, we're going to be talking about this and hopefully have an opportunity to answer all your questions. And I know, Kim, you've got lots of questions. I know we've had these conversations over the years. You're really an expert in this already. But, what are some of those questions that you and others like you have had over the years about Jews and kosher?
Oh my goodness. So we have had so many stories. We're just the interesting things that we have gotten ourselves into over this whole kosher thing. And I want to hit a couple of things. I want to talk today about what kosher is and what kosher isn't. It is not rabbis blessing the food. It's not pickles. And I also want to talk about the why, because I think in Christianity, when there's something that you don't understand, something that is foreign to you, you really don't understand the why. And that there's a lot of misconception and there's a lot of anti-Semitism, unfortunately, that comes out of, well, why won't you eat my food? Because food is when you have a hospitality, when you have a guest come into your home and they politely turn down, the cookies you offer them, why it's a personal affront. But when you understand where their heart is coming from, it makes all the difference in the world. Where to start? So for me, I grew up, I think some of you know, in an extremely unusual childhood. And one of those things, as a child, I can remember why my mother did this. Only the Lord knows. Probably because he was preparing me for this job. We would go into a grocery store and we would make it a game to look on the boxes of food to check whether or not it had a kosher symbol on it. Why? We didn't keep kosher. We didn't eat kosher. It was a game. It was is this kosher? Is it not kosher? And so I knew as far back as I can remember what an OU symbol was. And most people, if they're not exposed to this, they have no clue that 3/4 of the food in their pantry is kosher. And it's like Orthodox kosher. I remember this was a number of years ago, probably 15, 16, 18 years ago. But I was flipping through a magazine and there was a full page ad, for Oreos. And all it was an Oreo cookie, right? You could tell that it was an Oreo cookie, but one half, like it was the black cookie with the white middle and the black half was off. And then in the center of the white, they had a U carved into the white, right? So it was this black OU. And I cracked up when I saw that commercial because I said, oh my goodness. No one. This is one audience and one audience only because nobody who doesn't keep kosher is going to understand what this is signifying and what this ad is saying. But Oreos became kosher and it was a big deal. I remember for you.
As a kid, Oreos was a very popular cookie, sure. In the general market and something we could not buy. And, if we would see Oreos advertised somewhere and we would say, mommy, can we have Oreos? And she would say, no, it's not kosher. And we had kosher lookalikes.
Right.
But it wasn't as good as Oreos, I have to say, because after Oreos became kosher and I tried them, I said, Oh, we're not
Now
supposed to do
I know.
advertisements, but
Right,
Yeah,
but it really is, keeping kosher and that whole. I mean, it's a huge industry, at least in the United States,
right.
because people, they know food industries know that if they have kosher markings, branding, if they keep the food kosher, then that puts them into a market that is exclusive in the Jewish community, and so it spills over and it's all over. But so tell us, what is kosher not? Because I think the biggest misconception with kosher is that the rabbis bless the food, or it has something to do with the rabbis. So what is kosher not?
Okay, so when we started talking about pickles, I would say the two most, common misconceptions about kosher is one, as you said, is this has something to do with some blessing that a rabbi placed over the food. And another misconception is that when a certain product will say kosher style, that it means it's kosher. And actually, kosher style just really means Jewish style. So, like, if there's it's kind of like saying pasta, lasagna noodles is Italian style. So these kind of dill pickles are Jewish style. I don't know what other kind of pickles there are, but whatever. It really is a misuse of the word kosher when they write kosher style. What kosher really is really has to do with the commandments in the Bible and all kinds of developments and oral traditions that were passed along through the generations alongside these commandments. But one of the most fundamental places where kosher rules begin is in Leviticus 11, where there's a whole list of animals that are kosher and non-kosher. And the words here used in the biblical word here is pure and impure. But it's these are the animals we can eat. So, a lot of people know that kosher, if you keep kosher, you don't eat pork. Okay. And that's here. That's in the Bible. That gives us the symbol of what kind of animals can we eat. We can eat an animal that has a split hoof and I forgot what it's
Choose
called.
its cud. Choose its cud.
That's it. Choose its cud. Right. I mean, I know how to say
sheep, deer.
Right. So you can have sheep and you can have cows, and of course beef is a very popular kind of meat, cows. But it excludes pigs because pigs don't chew their cud. So, and of course there's shellfish we don't eat because fish has to have fins and scales. And if any kind of fish that doesn't have fins and scales, then you can't eat it. So we eat salmon, we eat tuna, we eat.
But you don't eat catfish.
Sardines. I don't eat sardines. Some people eat sardines, right? But yeah, no catfish. So, and no crab and no
lobster.
Lobsters or any of that kind of
right.
stuff. So that's number one, what we eat and what we don't eat. But, and here it gets a little more complicated. There's things having to do with what you can eat your food with and how it can be prepared. And there are 3 different times in the Bible, 2 in Exodus and 1 in Deuteronomy, where it says you cannot cook a kid in his mother's milk. And that has been understood by Judaism, by Jews, from the rabbis all the way from the beginning, Moses' time till today, as an oral tradition that is understood to mean that you cannot mix any kind of meat, that the kid here is just a representative of all meat, okay, and you can't have any meat together with milk, any milk, okay?
Right.
So the other fundamental of kosher is this idea of total separation between meat and milk. Now, somewhere along the line, they decided that chicken, fowl, whatever, is going to be considered meat, all right? Fish, though, is not meat.
Not.
Okay, so I can eat fish with ice cream. Does anybody eat fish with ice cream? That's like a really weird combination. Okay, but I can put, I don't know, make a dressing with sour cream, right? Or with yogurt. My mother makes this delicious yogurt dressing that she puts on salmon. Okay, that's not a problem. But I can't have a cheeseburger. Okay, and I can't put cheese together with beef. All right, So those are the main things. Now, along the way, all kinds of other rules were developed that had to do with, first of all, another thing, and that's slaughtering rules. And this, by the way, is a huge issue today in Europe. Because we slaughter animals. We do not have any kind of machine or assembly line kind of slaughter. It's considered in Jewish law to be not humane. And each animal is individually slaughtered in this very meticulous way, is how it's done, with a very sharp knife, very quick, in a very certain place to ensure instant death. Okay? Mm-hmm. And that is what we call ritual slaughter. And that's part of it. So it's not just that you can have a chicken, but you can have chicken only if it's been slaughtered properly. And there is a rabbi.
And Sondra, let's bring that back, because that's biblical as well. Like, so when people talk about it, because God lined it out in the Bible, this is how you slaughter it, and that's where it comes from. So this isn't, this is straight from God himself.
Yeah. We actually have
a lot of modern methods. Modern methods are not, are just, not allowed. And that's become a huge issue in Europe, because today there are a few countries in Europe. Right now, big focus is on Belgium, but there are a number of countries in Europe that are passing legislation to forbid kosher slaughter. Right. And this is something that there are very small Jewish communities today in Europe. They don't have a lot of clout, but they have tried, and they have gone to the courts and tried and to the politicians and petitioned them to allow them. And so far, I know in Belgium there was a recent decision that is forbidding kosher slaughter. So that's unfortunate. Of course, my answer to the Jews in Europe is, come to Israel. Lots of kosher food, lots of kosher meat, not a problem. But this is an issue in other countries as well. So that's, anyway, so basically, in addition to all of that, though, it's because of the separation between milk and meat, we take that further. And again, this is not something I made up, but this has been our tradition for thousands of years. We have separate pots, separate dishes, separate silverware for meals, for cooking, depending on whether it's meat or milk. So it's not just that we don't cook the meat and milk together, but we're not going to cook something that's meat in a pot that we cooked milk in yesterday. Okay? Right. We're going to keep them separate. And of course, the easiest way to do that is just to have two sets of pots, two sets of pans, two sets of silverware, and two sets of dishes. And if you are used to keeping kosher, it's really easy. And there's tons of kosher cookbooks that keep that in mind. So you're not going to have recipes that are going to mix milk or cream with meat. Now, sometimes people take recipes like, I remember as a kid in the 60s, it was a huge new revolutionary invention was non-dairy cream.
Right.
And that was a big thing. I remember in the States, Riches is a company that is a big, manufacturer of non-dairy creamer and non-dairy whipped cream. And I understand that in recent years where there are people, for example, who are vegan and don't have milk, and there are people with milk intolerances and milk allergies, that they too are benefiting from all this non-dairy substitutes that have been created initially aiming primarily for the kosher market. So that we could do that. And there's also new developments now because of the growth in the vegan and the vegetarian community. You have a lot of meat substitutes.
Yes.
So you have these veggie burgers today. And so you have people who keep kosher that will make a so-called cheeseburger, right? And they'll use cheese with a veggie burger, right?
Yep.
So this is just, these are things that have developed recently. But I would say that's in a nutshell what it's all about.
Well, and I think, that was one of the interesting conversations I had. It was with Danny, and he's like, oh, I cannot wait until they come up with this, the fake meat, the manufactured meat. I don't even know what they call it. But anyway, not the veggie burgers, but
right, I know you're talking about.
I don't even know. It's printed on a 3D printer or something. I don't know. But he goes, And I said, well, why? Like what? And he goes, because it's going to be kosher, because it's all, basically plant-based or soy-based or whatever. And he said, because he goes, I want to make a cheeseburger. I want to eat a cheeseburger for the very first time. And I just kind of looked at him and I said, okay, most of the time, like when I've talked to you, or other people that keep kosher, and they say, it's not appealing. It's something that's so ingrained that you don't mix meat and milk that it's a turnoff. It's a bleh. And so I said to him, I said, why would you want a cheeseburger? Like why would this be appealing to you? And he goes, because I love cheese. And he said the advertisements for a big juicy cheeseburger just look amazing. And I've never had one, and I want to try it.
Well, I also love cheese, and I think, why when I said about the veggie burgers don't look like real hamburgers. Okay,
right.
You see the peas and carrots in there or whatever,
yes.
And so right. When I put cheese on that, it doesn't offend me in any way. But
right.
I also, there's what I call the yuck factor,
right.
When you're so ingrained not to eat this stuff, you see it and you kind of go, So I've been in situations where, of course, I travel all over the world and very often go and join my Christian friends somewhere, in a non-kosher restaurant, and I usually bring my own salad or bagel or whatever, and eat with them, and they're eating stuff from the restaurant, and if they'll have bacon or seafood or something, and I'm sitting there, and I have to say, it's like a little bit gross for me. But I'm not offended at all. I say, go to it if you enjoy it. And it's interesting to me how they like it. But there's this gut feeling in there, which I hope I never reveal, because I certainly don't want to be rude to anybody. And I think it's just great that everybody should eat whatever they want. But it's like inside me, I say like, oh my goodness, they eat that? But it's just a natural thing.
I will never forget. So many, many years ago, you may have forgotten, I don't know, back when we first started working together, you came and stayed at my house, and one of my roommates at the time, she was there and she was eating breakfast, and she, just being herself, offered you a plate of bacon and eggs, because she was fixing breakfast. She had no idea, and you were like, no. And I was like, no, don't offer Sondra bacon. Oh my God, no. And she was like, what? And it, Iowa farm girl, it like blew her mind that you had never, and she questioned you for like 5 minutes. You've never tasted bacon? Like not even once? And, and she just could not conceive of the fact that anybody on the planet had never in their life tasted pork.
Well, what I think is like interesting, I know Tommy, I'm sure you have a lot to contribute to this, because over the years, I have met Christians who tell me that they're biblically kosher.
Right.
And it took me a while to understand what they were referring to. And I think what they were referring to is that the same animals that are listed in Leviticus 11 that they don't, not supposed to eat, they didn't eat.
Right.
One of the challenges I had was to explain to them that even if they keep biblically kosher, that's not Jewish kosher. In other words, if they wanted to feed me and they'll say, don't worry, there's no pork here, I'm just going to give you chicken, that they didn't realize for me that wasn't good enough because of all the other rules. But Tommy, I'm sure that's something you have a lot more experience with.
Right. Well, I think when, one of the things that Christianity has, one of the terms Christianity has used out there in its kind of its arrogant presentation of discovering the Torah for the first time is the biblical kosher verbiage, which is basically just saying to the Jews that you don't know what you're doing, that you don't, that we got it and you don't,
No, Tommy, it's that we don't want to keep all the law. We only want to keep Jews.
Well, and I think that to make sense of it and to appreciate the Jewish kosher is that Jews are serious about Torah, and they're serious about it, so serious about it that they have guards around, sometimes guards around the guards, around the fences, and they have fences around fences even sometimes, and it goes out further, to guard that fence and this fence. And I've kind of grown. I have grown to really appreciate that. What God says, what God calls unclean, is unclean. And so, and I want to take that. I want to take that seriously in my own life, not because I'm Jewish or I want to be Jewish, but because God said.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of times too, let's face it, especially in Western Christianity, food is an idol. If you tell me, if you come to me, Sondra, and say, you got to stop eating bacon, you know what? You've just destroyed my life. For some people, they can't imagine not eating pork or not eating cheese on a cheeseburger. That would just destroy them. It would just be the end of everything. And I think that for me to lay down some of those things, to say, what, there are good clean food out there, biblically clean food, and I agree with that. I think that for me personally, and this, that I don't keep all of the kosher, every one of the Jewish kosher laws. I don't understand it, and I wasn't raised like that, and I don't see that it's, but to look at what God says, and maybe it is a biblically kosher thing for us, but without the fences, without all that on there.
Well, Tommy, I'll just jump in here because I think that, something to make clear, 2 points. One, it's been proven, I think, medically that the food that God said is unclean is really quite unhealthy. Like all the shellfish and the catfish and, those things that God said,
Right.
They're kind of like the garbage disposals of the ocean, like they're cleaning up all the nasty stuff. And pigs as well. Pork is extremely not healthy for you, and so there definitely is some like genuine, when God said these things, when God laid these kosher rules down, it was for a purpose. And even just the keeping the milk, the meat and the dairy separate, your body digests different ways. And I think that there's different studies out there that show that your body digests food better when you don't eat milk and meat together. So I don't think that it's wrong, and I certainly don't think, if somebody is out there and they're really convicted and this is what they feel like God's told them to do, go for it. On the other hand, I think it's really important that from a Jewish perspective, and Sondra, I'll just throw this back to you, why are you not offended when I eat, bacon or a pork chop, or, why does that, it kind of is an ick factor, but it really doesn't affect you because those laws were not intended for me. So you want to address that?
Yeah, well, and this is actually a kind of conversation that I have a lot with some of my Christian friends who are going more in the Hebraic roots route, and Tommy to a certain degree, and some of the people that Tommy is hanging out with or whatever. And this is, I would say, a very clear distinction in our minds as Jews. When if we look for an example, but there are many examples. Okay, if we look at Leviticus 11, which is that chapter that details all the animals that are clean and not clean. How does the chapter begin? The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying to them, "Speak to the Israelite people thus: these are the creatures that you may eat from among all the land animals." Blah blah blah. Okay, so to me, our belief is, while the Bible clearly has universal messages, when it comes to all of these commandments, these are commandments that were given to the Jewish people. Now, anybody is welcome to read into these commandments and gain messages. And like what Tommy is saying, if God said that a pig is not a clean animal, then I don't want to eat it. Okay,
Right.
And I think that's a very fair. That is a very fair interpretation. Absolutely. But I believe that Tommy's not obligated to refrain from pork, whereas I, as part of the children of Israel, I am obligated to refrain from pork. And so that's the difference, which is why when I sit with someone who is not Jewish, and they can, as far as I'm concerned, they can eat whatever they like, and it's not offensive to me in any way. I would go even further. Where am I pained? Okay, when I sit with a Jew who doesn't keep the commandments, and they eat pork. And that happened to me once. I remember a very important person from Israel who, we had a lot in common. We were working together to advocate for the communities in Judea and Samaria. He was a secular Jew when I knew that. But many of the secular Jews in Israel are still traditional to some extent, and they won't eat pork. And we were together abroad, and I joined him at the breakfast buffet in the hotel, and he was sitting and eating bacon, and I almost fell off my chair because I'm like, "You're Jewish." I mean, I didn't say anything. I was polite and whatever, but I'm thinking, "Oh my gosh!" But again, it's not for me, and that's also something I feel very strongly about. Even though I believe that every Jew does have to keep kosher, that's between them and God. It's not for me. I will try to inspire, and I will say, "Oh, I'm happy keeping kosher," but I am not going to go around saying, "Why aren't you keeping kosher?" It's just I don't believe any of us should be walking around telling other people what to do.
Yeah, that brings up another point, because I think this is again something that will cause a lot of confusion. And when people are around Jews, Orthodox, secular, kosher, not kosher, and that's something that took me a long time, even as versed in kosher as I was, as familiar as it still took me a number of years to really come to understand that kosher is something that is extremely personal. And so what you're comfortable with, or not comfortable with. So an example would be, there are some very lovely people, but they're comfortable going into a restaurant that's not kosher and eating salmon, for instance, or eating a salad. And there's nothing, that's it's a personal thing. Whereas that's something that you probably wouldn't do.
Okay, so I don't know if there is a personal element. I would say that there's certain laws that we all agree, those are the laws.
For sure, right.
But like this idea of salmon. So I have friends, and they will go to a restaurant and they will say, "Let me see your salmon." Okay, and they're going to say, "Oh yeah, that's really a salmon." Okay, can you please wrap that in aluminum foil?
Yep.
And then put it separately in the oven, and then bring it.
That's exactly what I've seen. Yep.
Right. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. Number one, I have no idea. I know what a salmon looks like, but I don't want to put on myself making sure that it's a salmon. I'm just not an expert in salmon. Give me my grilled salmon with the spices and the sauce and whatever, and I'll have it fine. I'm not one of these people that's checking out if it's really a salmon. Number two, I feel like an idiot going into a kitchen and saying, "Do me a favor and prepare me salmon." I can't wait to eat salmon when I get home. So that's also part of it. Okay. I don't want to, but it's also, I take these rules so seriously that I feel like Tommy was talking about fences on fences. Okay. Maybe this is part of my fences. Okay. I don't want to have this extra obligation on my head that I have to worry about, did they wrap the salmon in the foil, and is he going to touch the salmon while it's hot with a fork? I don't want to have to think about it. I just want to, let's keep my life easy. I'm going to bring my bagel, and I'm going to bring it on my own paper plate, and I don't have to worry about it.
Right.
Now, there are problems, like, for example, there are people who will eat salad. And there's a difference between, I'm not going to go into the details, but there's a difference between things that are hot and cold, okay? So a lot of people say, what's the big deal? They're going to, cut up some lettuce and tomato and put it on a plate, and it's all cold and nothing's been cooked and it's fine. And and then then I'm always asking, but what about the knife that they used to cut that salad back there in the kitchen? And I remember you, Kim, told me when I said, if I buy some cut up fruit in the supermarket, that's probably fine. She says, "Honey, I worked in a supermarket. There's nothing clean about the knives that are using to cut the melon, and you have no idea if they didn't cut ham, half an hour earlier."
That's right.
And so it's that thing. It's that like, can I rely on this purity, or do I just want to say, I don't want to get involved. I don't want to go into somebody's kitchen and start supervising. I just want to keep it simple.
Yeah. Well, and that brings up a really good point as well. Just for these, if you happen to be hosting, someone who's kosher, the what you don't want to do, and you said this to me so clearly one time, and I was like, that makes sense. And that's the last thing you want to do is be walking into somebody's house and inspecting it from head to toe, which is what you would need to do in order to feel comfortable. And it's just, it's not what it's about, because again, this is for you and it's much easier. So if you ever host anyone who's kosher, just let them fix the food or go buy packaged food. It's so simple. All paper plates, all plastic silverware. It's easy. You don't even have any dishes when you're done.
One of our supporters has, every time I come to her, she always says, "You are the easiest guest I've ever had. I don't have to do anything except buy Diet Coke."
There you go.
And Diet Coke is definitely not kosher. It's not.
I agree, Tommy. I agree.
It's kosher. It may not be healthy, but it's kosher.
Not by my rabbi. It's not.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that just to give people an understanding of, you may see different aspects of it. Another thing, because this was something I didn't understand many years ago before I ever met you. My sister used to be a nanny for a Jewish couple in Minneapolis, and she would tell us stories, of these two kids that she was raising and whatever, and they kept a kosher kitchen at home, and they were probably traditional. They certainly were not Orthodox. It was a couple of doctors. And the daughter, she would tell stories that the daughter would come home and she would be tattling on her brother. "Mommy, he had a cheeseburger at lunch today." And I was horrified because I was like, I know that wasn't kosher. And I was just like, so I remember having a conversation with you and saying, what was the deal? Why would they, why was this even an issue? What was going on in this? And you explained to me that a lot of families would keep a kosher kitchen at home so that grandparents would come, or other family members would be able to come and would be able to eat as part of the family, but that the family wasn't so, if it was outside the home, the rules, they weren't so committed to it, let's say, and it just wasn't that big of a deal. What are your thoughts on that?
I've always been Orthodox, so I've never eaten non-kosher food ever. Okay. But, and my home was kosher growing up and as an adult, and, we only ate kosher outside. And so that's where I'm coming from. But we had relatives who did all kinds of things. And what some of my friends who were not observant when they were younger and then became observant, there's a phenomenon that it seems is quite common, is that there would be people, like you said, that keep a kosher home, either for relatives or sometimes just because this is how their parents' home was. And to them, their home needs to be a Jewish home. There was something spiritual about that. What is a Jewish home? You have a menorah, on your buffet table, right? And you have a mezuzah on your door, and you keep it kosher. And this certainly in people, let's say my parents' generation for sure, and even to some extent my generation. But as the generations have gone on in the United States, you're seeing less and less of this. But this was definitely an issue. Keep the home a kosher home. And then they would go out. And then there became this thing with Chinese, because people would go, starting in I guess in the 60s or 70s, Chinese food became very popular as takeout. And, those white cartons, and people would go and get Chinese and not eat at the restaurant, go and take it home. And so this became very attractive for Jews, but who were not strict. And they were like, okay, I don't eat kosher when I go out, okay, but I eat kosher at home. So what do I do with Chinese takeout? I bought it out, in a refrigerator, but can I bring it into the house? And then, and I'm telling you, I've heard this from not one, not two, but several people. You can eat it in the den.
Eat it in the living room.
Yeah, eat it in the den. No, not the living room. The den with the TV. Over in that side room, that teeny room over there in the back that just has a TV and a little couch and that's it. Whole family squishes in there and you eat your unkosher Chinese food out of your cartons in the den. Now, the living room's no good because then you have a Shabbat meal or a holiday meal in the living room. You don't want it in the living room and you don't want it in the kitchen because it can, contaminates you. Right. No, you eat it in the den. So, what can I tell you? All kinds of folks.
I also want to say too that I think the kosher, the kosher laws also has kept the Jewish, just like keeping Shabbat.
Absolutely.
It's kept Jewish identity, and it's also kept them from assimilation. Kept them from there are so many things that God I believe is used within the Jewish community. Unfortunately, Christians want to come in and want to say that Jesus made all foods clean, and I know you have. I'm sure you haven't heard that, Sondra, but that's what they believe. Or Peter saw a vision, and it's and now everything's. But what I would like to say to our Christian friends out there, and my friends too, is that in all of those cases, in all those places, that in the New Testament where you might think, or we kind of gravitate towards the all food is clean deal, there were serious moral teachings that were happening. One was with Peter's vision was that Peter wasn't supposed to look at Gentiles or non-Jews as not being clean. That was the moral deal of the story. And in Mark chapter 7, where it's talking about that, it's about what it's about adultery, it's about idolatry, it's about horrible lying and fornication and sexual. It's about all these things that we were being taken in to our bodies and then coming out in these. So we miss a lot of times because we've lowered ourselves to say it's about food, and none of those places in the New Testament was the whole thing was not about food. It was about something bigger than that. Definitely. And I think especially the Peter's vision with the unclean food, it was the way that Jews looked at Gentiles, because you weren't supposed to be anywhere close to those people. And I think that we're, one of the things that's happening here, even with us, is that we do see ourselves different. I mean, there's no doubt that there's one of these things is not like the other in this three pictures here, but we all really have a tremendous amount of love and respect for each other, and I think that's the thing when we face the divide, in this program here, that we walk away from here going, yes, that's so important. Sondra, keep doing what you're doing. I am not coming to you ever and saying, hey, lighten up a little bit. You ever just want to try a piece of bacon? Come on, let's just, I won't tell anybody. But I think that there's a lot of Christians out there who just love to exploit what they think is their freedom. But what really God's telling us is to love, to love each other, to love that person that is that maybe don't eat like I eat. But exactly. I just felt like that. I would ask our Christian brothers and sisters to go back and look at those moral truths that we can get out of those passages that you've kind of relegated to a food deal. It's not. Yeah. It wasn't meant for that. It absolutely was not meant for that.
As with everything, Tommy, facing the divide, it really is based on respect. And that when we can, even if there's something that we don't understand, like keeping kosher and all of the details, because we really have just scratched the surface of it. We've hit a 40,000, miles above it ground here. But but that we can say, okay, we don't understand it, we don't maybe agree with it, or we don't whatever, but we can see that this is very important to our Jewish friends, and we can see that it really comes from a place of their heart and their devotion to God and their relationship with God. And it's not necessarily like a heaven and hell issue, like as we would say it in Christianese, but it is something that is a very personal, deeply held conviction. And that's what I would say. It's more, I think, for me, a lot of times Christianity looks at keeping kosher and Orthodox Judaism and says it's all about the laws. It's all about, the fences. It's all about the do's and the don'ts. And after 20 years, more than 20 years of working closely with Jews, it's not that. It's a heart issue. It's a choice. And I think that that's important, that when we come across these people that say, no thanks. Maybe today we're a little bit more tolerant. I mean, how many people do we know that are vegan or vegetarian or, milk, lactose intolerant, whatever it is. And hopefully we're in a kinder, gentler world where we say, okay, we don't choose to be that way, but we're going to try to accommodate that. We're going to try to, not judge you for that and not be so judgmental because you're different than me. And we're going to just love you anyway. And that's what I would say as Christians, hopefully, that we can do for our Jewish friends is just be a little bit more, have a little more grace with them. What can I say?
Well, there's just one last thing that I would like to say about this whole thing. And it really is not just about kosher, but it's the relationship that we as Jews have to the Bible and to the commandments as a whole. And I remember, I've had these kind of conversations over the years, and I am very well aware of a traditional type of Christian anti-Semitism that comes to Jews and says, it, like you kind of alluded to, Kim, Jews are of the law, and we, the Christians, we've gone beyond that. We're of the Spirit. And the truth of the matter is that for me, I believe that the Bible was given to the Jewish people. I believe that God gave us the Ten Commandments at Sinai. He dictated the Bible to Moses, and in this Bible, I'm talking particularly about the 5 books of Moses, is a lot of commandments, okay? Mm-hmm. And those commandments are kind of outlines, and as they were applied to real people in real life over the centuries, they were modified, they were added to, they were interpreted. There were a lot of oral traditions that were handed down from Moses' time and continued to be passed down. And so this idea of following the commandments is something we take very seriously. And if you opt to follow the commandments because you believe that this is God what wants us to do, and that's what I believe. I believe God wants me to follow his commandments, okay? Right. So if I opt into that, I cannot pick and choose. I can't say, well, God, this was a good commandment, but that one, not so much for me. Thanks, but no thanks. It doesn't work like that. If you opt into the system, you're in the system. And so it's the system as a whole that's meaningful. Not every single detail of every single commandment is meaningful, but it's the fact of the obedience to every single detail of every single commandment that is meaningful, because it's part of the it's part of, I don't know what you would call it. It's just submission. Yeah, that's the word. Yeah, it's submission. And it's submission to God. It's not submission to something legalistic. It's submission to God.
God. Yeah, no, it's great.
I would say too, I don't know anybody, Sondra. I hear a lot of Jews saying, I'm a proud Jew. They'll start their speeches off. I'm here today as a proud Jew. And I always get excited when I hear that there are Jews that are proud to be Jews, and they're excited about it. And I appreciate, because nobody, I don't think, could walk in your shoes like you do, and be around as many non-Jews as you do, and not really hold strong. And it's amazing to me to see how strong you hold the line, and that, because there's a lot of people that would be, would say, hey, I'm done with this, this is, but look how long you've been doing it, and it's been a real blessing to me personally that you've held on the patience to walk in these arenas that aren't sometimes so understanding of who you are as a Jew, as a proud Jew. You know, that's who you are. So
Right.
I appreciate that.
Well, thank you.
Sounds
Okay.
good. Well, until next time, guys, send us your questions, and hope you enjoyed the program.